G'day people, I'm Sharyn, welcome to my channel. A little while ago I showed you my blue quilt, which is done with my version of Quilt As You Go, like this, but with borders around the blocks, and it gives a quite different effect. Got me excited. I played with this one square, that was my first try, and now I've had a go with another one. So I think I've got it a bit better now. This is the bee hoop on my Janome 10,000. I'm going to put a big enough piece of fabric in here. You can see it actually extends well past the hoop. I'm going to put a big enough piece in here that I can have all my backing in one piece, even though I'm adding to that border. So get that in like that. It's not firm but not stretched is what is important. If it's stretched when you're going to do an embroidery, then when you take it out of the hoop it will pull back in and you'll end up with wrinkly bits about whatever you've designed, whatever you've stitched out, and I would rather not do that. However, I do want it firm enough so that when it's stitching it doesn't move it too much in here. I'm not really worried about it for these designs because these designs are actually quite lightweight. They're not dense and they don't tend to move things very much. I need a big enough backing, a big enough wadding, and the fabric for the top needs to be just big enough to do the central square. Pulling up the bobbin thread. I'm still in the hoop, but you can see with the cream thread here, it's going to look quite different on the back to that one. And I think I prefer to have the back of it like this. So the square will still be obvious by the time I've put these sashing pieces on. The actual quilting design will still be obvious once I've put the design on. What won't be obvious is that square. And I think that will give me a more cohesive look on the back of what I'm planning to make with this. I've just removed all of the jump threads from the back. There are times when I actually find it's easier to leave them on. These designs are generally so lightweight in their stitching that if you leave those jump threads on, they're probably going to be fairly easy to cut off anyway. And sometimes that's easier than letting the machine give you little knots and things on the back. It gives a better effect. On the right side here, you can see I've got those few threads to cut off, all my jump threads. And then I'm ready to take it. I could have taken it out of the hoop before now. I'm going to take it out of the hoop now, just pop it out. And I'll show you how I'm planning on getting the sashing on it. I'm going to cut this now with a 1 1/4 inch from that line, just inside that line, to where I'm cutting. So that's how big my square is going to end up being. If you've watched me doing some of my other squares, I normally cut them out with a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that gives me a 1/2 inch sashing to put beside them. But these ones, because I want to put the sashing on them, I'm doing them at 1 1/4 inches. Part of the reason I'm doing that is I have got a box full of fabric, small box, but a box nevertheless, full of fabric that I've already got cut into 1 1/2 inch strips. So that should be the same size, I think, as this one. So they'll work together. But I'm going to put a different coloured sashing around the outside, and I should be able to make it a little bit better around the outside edges. My piece of fabric that I'm going to use to be my sashing, so they're going to end up there, I lay them face down and somewhere close to that line. It doesn't have to be perfect, but somewhere close to that line is a good idea, because I want to make sure I'm going to stitch from the other side of the fabric, and I want to make sure that there is plenty enough space there for me to catch that edge. Same thing at this side. Yeah, a couple of pins. Like that. I'm going to turn over and I'm going to stitch from this wrong side. And I'm going to start up here, right at the edge, follow through here, and I'm going to be just inside this row of stitching and carry on to the end. Same thing on this side, so just towards the middle of the square on each side. I have drawn a little line to extend this. I want to be just inside both lines. Needle down, run things a bit faster. Came out very straight on the drawn line. You can see now that I've turned that over, it's actually not a bad approximation for where the edge of the whole block is that I cut out. And now I'll stitch the other side. There's 2 rows of stitching, and the row that I have just stitched is the row that's at the bottom, so it's closer to the design. I can fold that out, and because I was just inside that line, that original line of stitching that was brightly coloured is no longer visible. Now that I have this folded out, I actually want to stitch it down at the edge, and I really don't want to be very far from the edge. So I've put a few pins in and I'm just stitching it quite close to the edge. Same thing on the other side. And now that both sides of that are done, I'll go and add the pieces to the top and bottom. I've pinned down the pieces on the right side, just a little bit inside where I drew those 1/4 inch lines. Because this is stitched on both sides, I shouldn't have problems with it puckering. That's my theory anyway. And I'm going to sew down here, or where I've got my pin head. And the other side. So now if I pull those pins out, fold this one out here. I can go down this side. And just needs some trimming. Here's the final block from the back. I actually cut the edges from the back. I found it was a little bit easier for me to see things. If you're sewing a design like this and the machine you're using has got thread cutters, sometimes it's a good idea to turn them off. This particular design, when I designed it, I had to have it in 4 parts. It was the only way I could do it. And the result is that if the cutter was on, I would have 4 positions around here where there would be little bits of thread poking up when the machine had cut things off and then restarted. By not having the cutter on, I'm actually able to trim them off very, very close, and it's not very difficult to do. So here's design number 98 with borders from the back, and design number 27 with borders from the back. I've just put a piece of tape over the top of that so you can see what it would look like when they're joined together with my quilt as you go method. I think it actually will look better to have an entire quilt like that rather than with these bits coming up. If I was going to do it like this, I would definitely be removing that outside coloured square. So from the front, when I put the different pieces together and use the same fabric that I've got in here, it's a really nice effect, and I can see that there are going to be lots of applications where you could either do different colours around the outside or put the same colour on each square around the outside. There are just so many ways that this could be used. As an added extra, design number 98 actually has some space in the middle, so if you were making something for somebody, you could put their initials in there. It's all a bit of fun, really. See you next time.